In the opening scene, two friends arrive on an eerie island in search of a lost treasure. Everywhere there is nothing but water, and there is not a single living thing. The group suddenly begins to move as they get closer to the island. Surprisingly, they discover that the island is actually a huge blue whale that has been chained by someone or something. The film slices to half a month after this, earlier in history. At midnight, a vast wheat field is illuminated by the brilliant light left by a magnificent white mare. Behind it, an elderly farmer calls his three sons the following morning to display their devastated wheat fields because their only source of income is being destroyed. The man likewise teaches his children to keep watch around evening time, needing to get the blameworthy party behind it. The more youthful sibling, John, is then given this obligation by the siblings. John is conscious of the huge task at hand and his apprehension of the dark. However, he agrees to watch at night in order to gain his father's trust. John talks to the rescued hedgehog in a friendly way. As he speaks, after noticing the mare's silhouette, he quickly tosses a rope in its direction. John is abruptly being hauled through the glades and fields by the horse, and the rope tightens at a particular point. From where he can see the beautiful town, he is even hauled through the sky. John starts yelling with joy as he is captivated by the view. But the mayor gets into an accident, and they both end up in a bog, which soon ends his happy time. The mayor is left stranded as he watches the poor animal drown, though John manages to escape. To avoid forgetting his mission, John tries to assist it. He tries to pull the massive marrow out on his own, but the beast won't move. Consequently, he starts a nearby wheat mill and eventually saves it. When the mare, overcome with gratitude, sheds a tear, John is deeply moved. He then commands the mare to promise never to trample their fields again after releasing it from its chains. John sees the abandoned wheat field after the city chairman has left, and he realizes that the next day he will bear the consequences of the destruction. The morning after the incident, John finds two magnificent black royal horses when he enters the stable. He takes in these creatures' appearance. When he suddenly hears a voice in the background, he is shocked. He quickly grabs a pitchfork and attempts to defend himself. However, John is surprised when he approaches the noise's source to find a small magic full with humpbacks. He miraculously has the ability to converse with John as if he were a human. He informs John that the mare he encountered earlier is his mother, who has given him two horses and is accompanying himself to assist John. Shortly after the elderly farmer cried out in despair, John saw the state of the demolished wheat field. He was in a panic. Full Hatchet immediately conveyed John on his back as they hurried away from the field, detecting what is happening. While getting there, John once more expresses his desire to sell the horses in order to acquire a few truly essential assets and obtain assistance consents. Additionally, let's include some harsh whistles, summoning the horses to their location to prevent their capture by John's family. Now, with the majestic horses in their company, the group travels to the bustling market town in the hope of locating a suitable buyer. When John arrives, he receives a flurry of bids from eager buyers who want to own the regal horses. He decides, however, to keep the animals and only sell them to the richest person in the area out of avarice. That individual is uncovered to be, actually, the ruler. The ruler is captivated by the horses as John walks close to the magnificent royal residence. However, rather than buying them like a gentleman, he orders his men to capture them. John turns to Full for help, claiming that he would never have been able to purchase the horses on his own. John has no money and is depressed. Let's eventually add a whistle to the last option, getting back the ponies to John's side. Regardless, the creatures simultaneously tip the ruler over into a flour sack nearby. Despite the king's fury, he maintains his composure in front of the assembled public. John then makes a request for a trade for two, substituting hats for horses. Notwithstanding, he is helped by one to remember the ruler's retainers that the ponies will without a doubt keep on moving. To John now. In light of this, the king offers him the prestigious position of most important groom in the palace. John is overjoyed to have been given this chance. Therefore, he accepts without question. Additionally, as a result of the declaration, the entire group begins to support him. They view him as the animal soothsayer. John's popularity causes the king to become increasingly envious, and as a result, he attempts to execute him. However, he can't imagine a valid justification to do as such, so one day his subject proposes something. He should send John determined to catch the incredible firebird, according to his arrangement. John will without a doubt fizzle since it is inconceivable, which can be blamed so as to execute him. The king laughs so hard when he hears this that he issues the order. John also learns about the mission elsewhere, which motivates him to finish it. Full informs him that the firebird has never been tamed. In addition, this may prove to be an unreasonable undertaking that will not completely awe the locals. Thus, the two in the end started their excursion. With an end goal to discover some fantasy nuts, they adventure into the timberland. To lure the firebird, John is intrigued and needs to endeavor the nuts, but I want to lick the dream nuts. Nonetheless, Full blocks him from eating them, advising him that they behave like drugs. After that, they walk for the rest of the day until they reach the firebird's home in a desert oasis. There is an indication that liquid sand is present there. In any case, John stays nearby and spits the dream nuts. The majestic bird finally rises from the ground and begins to consume the nuts. The nuts begin to make the bird tanked, as indicated by the arrangement. However, before falling asleep, it notices the two and begins to attack. John and Foe always save one another, despite numerous near-death experiences. The subsequent chase also ruins the entire landscape. The firebird, on the other hand, is ultimately felled by the nuts in the end. The next day, after allowing John to capture it with chains, John and Foe find the firebird looking frail and crying a fiery tear. Full explains that the bird can only be hot when it is free, in the field. It uses up all of its energy quickly. After hearing this, John decides to free the bird as soon as he removes the chains because he feels sorry for it. The bird recovers its fire and flies out of sight. But before handing John a fire feather, of course. Since the mission was unsuccessful, Full advises them not to return to the kingdom because doing so could result in John's execution. But our brave but stubborn protagonist is certain that the fire feather will show that they caught the fire bird. When they return, the king orders their execution. As is to be expected, John tries to prove himself, figuring out that he got the bird, but by then set it free out of compassion. However, the king refuses to believe the executioner's story, so he uses an axe to kill him. However, the magnificent firebird appears suddenly, shining a bright light over the land. It has shown up to compensate John's solicitation for help in the wake of hearing John's supplication. The people are perplexed when they see the firebird following John's instructions. Consequently, John is spared death by the king, who throws a feast in his honor that night. All over the kingdom, John is praised as a hero. However, John is given the impossible task of rescuing the king maiden, who lives in an ice kingdom perched atop a high rock, as the king's ire grows. John's failure is certain, so the king will have good reason to execute him. After being informed by a messenger of the king's new assignment, John climbs the perilous high rock mountains the following day and accepts the challenge without hesitation. John and Foe finally reach the entrance to the palace, where the king maiden lives. However, they discover that they are prevented from entering the palace by a massive ice wall. Notwithstanding, with the help of the firebird's plume, John breaks the ice and lets a lot of water out when he does so. Sadly, this freezes Full in a heap of ice, sending him tumbling down the cliff. Despite the poor landing, he survives without injury. In contrast, John enters the palace and meets the empress. He introduces himself as a matchmaker sent by the king. However, the empress leaps off a cliff and informs him that she does not wish to wed him because there are no heroes left to test his bravery. John immediately follows suit to the rescuer, impressed by his bravery. Using her gown as a parachute, the empress begins her gradual descent. However, John accidentally punctures the gown at that exact moment, resulting in a rapid fall for both of them. They are saved from what appears to be a painful death when Full appears with brand new wings. Before heading back to the kingdom later that evening, the three of them establish a camp in the middle of the forest. During this time, John rejects Full's advice to escape the empress and save himself. The empress, who has been listening in on their conversation, is agitated by John's loyalty. When the trio arrived at the kingdom the following morning, John is greeted like a hero. Everyone is surprised by John's mission success and successful return. His developing aggression toward the ruler. Nevertheless, the king is compelled to provide him with a second reward later that evening. John decides to pay the ruler a visit because he has complete faith in his feelings for her. He brings some flowers up to her window, but their meeting is cut short when some courtiers enter carrying clothes for her. After a long time, the empress finally meets the king, and she is disappointed to discover that he is the same age as her father. Outside, John becomes jealous. The lord needs to wed the ruler the next day subsequent to seeing them together, however she opposes to put off the function. She specifies that getting hitched with a particular ring is a family custom. However, the ring was unfortunately lost in the water. The lord detonates when he hears this. As a result, he sends John on one more difficult question that very evening. While Full is thinking about John's whimsical behavior, he sees the soul of a whale taking off through the sky, talks to the sun, moon, and wind, and finds that the ring is in the stomach of a monster oil, which has since become an island. In the early morning hours, John and Foe set out to locate the whale fish, but when they got there, they discovered that she was chained up. Full was able to get in touch with the whale, and he learned that some sailors had chained her up as punishment. Her bad behavior, she ate up a couple of boats for not a really obvious explanation. About that time, she was youthful and guileless, however she currently regrets what she did. The whale sheds it here quickly. John comes up with the idea to let go of the chains by making her sneeze. They ride right into the whale's nose as a result. Additionally, the arrangement works to stimulate its internal organs with the tip of the dolt's quills, causing the enormous warm-blooded creature to simultaneously fight and tingle. All it additionally liberates the caught ships and breaks its chains. After decades, the whale showers John with praise by folding a priceless ring. The two revisitation of the window of the sovereign to give up the ring in the accompanying scene. In any event, their presence is not omitted. Guards and a courtier see them through a scope and rush to capture John. The lord is awoken by the noise, so he grabs his gun and dashes to the window to check on the situation. The king shoots him without hesitation. Then again, John is wrongly blamed for hijacking the lord lady when the gatekeepers storm into the room and capture him. The ruler then gets ready to wed the sovereign. However, to extend the time, she demands that he rejuvenate himself using a recipe passed down from her grandmother. She demands that he bathe in 3 pots, one with ice water, another with milk that is boiling, and the third with boiling water. Although the arrangement is clever, it causes John much deeper problems. Because he thinks it might be a trap, a courtier tells the king to test the cauldrons on John before he puts himself through the process. The ruler covertly tells everybody around evening time that she can stop the bubbling of the items. She uncovers that she put the ring from her grandma in the main pot, between the flower of life and death at the end of the world and the second firebird, a transitional feather. The third cauldron will eliminate the harmful effects. It sounds like it might be hard to find the third one. She asserts that John's survival depends on their success when carrying out this arrangement. The fool, who received a gunshot wound earlier, is aware that this is a perilous undertaking that could result in his death. However, since he no longer has the ability to fly, he sets out to find the flower for his best friend. He moves quickly to reach the end of the world. Full at last finds the blossom, yet it cautions him that any individual who eliminates it will bite the dust. Despite the ominous warning, Full plucks the flower to save John in the morning. The king orders him to jump into the boiling pots, claiming in sincerity that he is offering John a chance at redemption. Because he is afraid he will die, the latter bravely declares his love for the empress. He then immerses himself in the boiling water. At the same time, the empress successfully throws the ring into the first cauldron. John's safety is once more ensured when the firebird drops a feather in the second cauldron to assist him in escaping without injury. In contrast, Full is able to deliver the flower just in time to rescue John from the third and final cauldron. After successfully completing his rejuvenation, John appears before the who is amazed by his transformation. The lord is additionally stunned, and he thinks the recipe makes individuals more youthful. He then jumps into the main pot. However, as soon as he does so, a huge bubble forms. He's moved by it. In it, people just laugh at his mistake and start reciting for John without really thinking about it. The king is dishonest. He ought to be included in the milk. Between now and then, the empress and John noticed that Full was missing. So they start searching for him. They soon find him sitting patiently waiting for his death after he had picked the flower. On the other hand, the Empress reveals that the flower's warning was simply a test of bravery for the individual who chose it. Before he chuckled, she may have informed him of that. In addition, she clarifies that Fool would actually have died if he had not plucked it. But right now he won't. When he hears this delightful fold, he gets up and hugs his best friend. In the final scene, the audience demands that John become the new king and cheers for him. He gladly accepts and promises to fully defend the kingdom. John and the sovereign at last secure the bunch at the film's decision, as the newly crowned king and queen of the kingdom, and assume power. Turn on notifications, please subscribe for more videos like this, and like the channel to support it. Thank you very much for watching.